如果没有什么问题，那今天我们讲那个 lecture number 8. Sorry, I should speak English. So if there are no questions, we can start with the lecture number 8. So ready, steady, go. So in the previous lectures, you have learned mental process according to we have not discussed the analysis of the mental factors. We can discuss it today in reference to the Theravada analysis, which we're going to make. And today we will discuss the analysis of the mentality and of the Rupa in the Theravada tradition, which is actually so far the only living tradition explaining in detail how to become an Arahat. We know the northern tradition has some literature regarding that, but no commentaries, very few commentaries. And it is a matter of scholarship, not a matter of the living tradition. But this scholarship is still very important. Anyone who studies Yogacara starts by studying Jishalun Abhidharma Kosha, which is in a way the base for understanding the Yogacara tradition. As you will notice more and more when you study in depth, the Yogacara tradition is indebted very much to the Abhidharma Kosha. And Abhidharma Kosha is kind of a Sautrantika, Chimpu position in regarding to the Sarvastivada, Ichye Yopu. And no doubt the Yogacara is historically based on the Sautrantika view. And so this Theravada tradition is very precious. And in China and Tibet, they take it for granted, with very few exceptions. I hope in future will be more and more, that the Theravada tradition is explaining the more or less the same like the Chinese or Tibetan tradition, explaining the Sautrantika and the Sarvastivada view. But it is not true. Actually, the Theravada tradition is sometimes even radically different from the Sarvastivada. In this lecture, we don't have time to go into detail, but sometime you can later study and ask me. This is indeed a fascinating subject. And at the university, you have some good experts for this, like Professor Karunarasa and Dhammajoti. So I did not go into this. But it is very important to see this living tradition of meditation based on Abhidharma, because after all, the Visuddhimagga, Chinching Taolun, is based on Abhidharma and on the commentaries and sub-commentaries to the Agamas. So because it is a living tradition, it is very precious. So according to this living tradition, how do you study? First, in order to study, as you may know, I have already mentioned, there are two types of practice of Vipassana. One is called Kalapato in groups, and one is called Anupada, which means in detail. According to the tradition, in detail, it is the study of Shariputra. You have the Anupada Sutta in the middle Agama, and it is based on that. If you want to study in detail, then you necessarily need a mastery of shamatha. According to the Susima Sutta, actually in the whole, which is also quoted in Northern Buddhism, Cheng Sherun, which also explained that actually only the Susima Sutta explained that one can attain the state of an arahat without a mastery of shamatha. But normally the Buddha always teaching how to attain liberation. First he will teach the dhyanas. The mastery of dhyanas is the base for the vipassana. But you may not master the dhyanas, but you at least have to master the so-called the proximate dhyana, which enables you, which is called in Theravada tradition Upachara Dhyana, Chinfen Chan, which enables you to see the momentary appearance and disappearance of all the dharmas. So, but if you want to study in detail, you have to master shamatha, no other way. So normally all 8 samapatis are learned first. In Chinese tradition also, you will find first you study as a Ziliang Tao, as the Sambhara Marga, you first study the Wu Ting Xin. So it is shamatha, Wu Ting Xin. What is Wu Ting Xin? The shamatha. And you have had in your shamatha part, which we have explained before, you had the Jinshin, 5 kinds of Jinshin objects of purifying the conduct. They are actually corresponding to the Wu Ting Xin. So then when you have the shamatha, you can analyze nama rupa. And normally you always analyze the rupa first. The Anusava Sutta explains that the common man, non-enlightened man, cannot start meditation, cannot start vipassana with the mind, because he has been keeping it and believing that this is himself for long time. So he cannot be disenchanted, and you cannot teach him first to get disenchanted and to get disgusted with mind. You have to teach him first to get disenchanted, to get disgusted with the rupa, with the form, because it is very easy to see how this form gets old. It looks very beautiful in many cases in the early stage, but then it becomes, as it gets older, it gets less beautiful, then it gets a lot of sicknesses. So very easy to believe that this rupa is not the self. But usually the common man always identifies the self with the mind. So you start with the analysis of the rupa, and then the analysis of the nama, of mind and mental factors. Then when you have the analysis of nama rupa, of mind, mental factors, and the objects, then you can understand that everything we experience is dependent origination. Then you can study Vipassana in these different stages of purification as described in the Chinching Taolun, Visuddhimagga, and become an Arahat. Now this is a living tradition as opposed to the northern tradition, and indeed you can study it now. There are competent teachers who can teach you how to become an Arahat in this life if you have some Fu Bao. If not, then at least to get the clarity that everything is dependent origination. So once you have this clarity, you cannot believe firmly in see that our world is just 5 aggregates, nothing else. And so now let us go to this section in the words of the Visuddhimagga. A yogi, to accomplish the definition of Nama Rupa, if his vehicle is shamatha, he should emerge from dhyana and analyze the dhyana factors. The first dhyana factors of the dhyana factors of the first dhyana are 5. You may be familiar with it. Shin, Se, Si, Le, Yi, Jing, Xin. The applied thought, sustained thought, the joy, the happiness, and one-pointedness. So once you have the jhana, you have the jhana because you have the jhana nimitta. You have an image in your mind on which you can concentrate, and the mind will merge with that image. That is jhana. That is worldly jhana. Now, in order to become an arahat, you need to turn the worldly jhana into the supermundane jhana. How do you do it? By turning the mind on itself. This is also described in Yogacara. When you have jhana, it's very easy to turn the mind on itself because you can see very clearly that that image that you use for absorption comes from the mind itself. So in a way, it's not by accident that Yogacara is called Yogacara, because the yoga is a samadhi, and the samadhi and jhana, dhyana are the synonyms. So no doubt, a lot of the knowledge we find in Yogacara is coming from the investigation of the mind in a state of absorption, which is called dhyana, where the mind merges with the object. When the mind merges with the object, it is very clear that the object of the mind is the mental image, yin xiang. But as you know, according to Yogacara, actually everything we normally experience with a differentiating consciousness is the yin xiang, the mental yin xiang. You should be very clear about it and not be mistaken. But this yin xiang is, as you have learned, a transformation of the consciousness. I'm not teaching for you, I'm teaching now for the... So this transformation of the mind is actually everything we experience with a differentiating consciousness. And how do you find out? Through samadhi and through understanding, we have learned that the five consciousnesses, the object of the five consciousnesses is a direct object from the alaya, while it is the near object, while the objects of the six consciousness are the far objects. They come from the original stuff of the mind. Which is called je. Now, if you have a jhana, you can turn and you will see the heart base. Heart in this, according to the Theravada, the heart base is either the bhavanga, which corresponds, we will talk about it, to alaya, or it is so-called hadaya vatu, shinwu. This is a peculiarity of Theravada. You will not find it in any other tradition. That is the blood in the heart, in the shape of a reversed lotus, which is kind of a physical base for the mental consciousness. Some scholars identify it with nerve system. The seat of the nerve system is more hard than the brain. So in Eastern philosophy, in the Upanishads, in Chinese philosophy, the seat of the mind is not in the brain, but in the heart. Only in Western, it becomes the brain. The brain is only the support of the heart. And indeed, our distinction with the worldly mind is based on the feeling. So then you can study Jinjing Taolun to know a very detailed analysis of the Rupa, which you will not find in anywhere in any Sanskrit tradition. So this analysis of the Rupa, even so it is made by six consciousness, which is in Yogacara already based on our previous habits and on our concepts, yet it is very, very precious. And it has not, its importance has not been yet really understood by other traditions. Now, as you have studied in the Yogacara, this Rupa, the materiality, which is the four elements, and the derived materiality, color, sound, and so on, is in Yogacara based on the inner nimitta, the inner object, which is the Tianfen in the alaya, which is the subjective aspect of the alaya. This is very important to understand. So because of this, this subjective aspect is also called activity, xinxiang. And because of this xinxiang, then which are the seeds in the consciousness, then we see the things, the far, what we see outside. So we are in the Xu Wang Fen Bie. What is Xu Wang Fen Bie? The Zi Chen Fen, the Samviti becomes Jian Fen and Xiang Fen. Becomes the subjective aspect and the objective aspect. And it happens where? It happens in the alaya, of course. Alaya is activated by what? By the seeds. And the seeds, they are the subjective aspect of the alaya. They are the perfumation of the alaya. Due to them, we have the objective aspect, which is what we experience as the outside world. So actually what we experience as the outside world in the Yogacara, it's nothing but the mind. Ho Yan Jing explains Xin Yi Shi Suo Yan Jie Fei Li Zi Xin. What the mind experiences cannot leave their own nature. And therefore, Hu Wo Shuo Yi Qie Wei Shi. Therefore, I say everything is just mind. So the outside world is of the nature of the mind. Of what nature? Created by the bijas, by the Xu Qi. You have learned that. And the Lankavatara Sutra, which is also very important base for Yogacara, explains that because you Zi Xin Zhi Zhuo, because we cling to our mind, Xin Si Wai Jin Zhuan, because we hold to our mind, it seems that it is working on the base of the outer objects, as the Theravada Sarvastivada explains. But this is only seemingly, because we don't see the whole. In order to see the whole, we have to study alaya. So alaya is a royal path to understanding the whole, and to realize not only Ren Wu Wo, but also Fa Wu Wo, the non-self of everything we experience. So, as opposed to the Sanskrit tradition, the Theravada tradition has a very detailed literature on the analysis of the rupa, based on meditation. So I have given you some of the important points here. So according to Theravada tradition, this is a difference also. All the objects of our experience are to be analyzed in terms of 4 aspects, so that you see that everything we experience is in dependent origination. So you will see their idea is similar to Sautrantika. Actually, what we experience is only based on the present experience of the Nama Rupa, and which is stored in our mind in the form of where it is stored. In Alaya or in the Theravada, it is called Bhavanga. The consciousness which allows the mind to have continuity. Because the sixth consciousness is always appearing and disappearing. So where does the continuity come from? From the Alaya, from the Bhavanga. Bhavanga means the cause of existence. Yofen, Yofen Shu. So that means that what we experience as the outside world is a Xiangfen, and Xiangfen is a Vikalpa, Fenpie. Now, when you read the Chengwei Shalun, there is a verse, Yena Yena Vikalpena Yat Yat Vastu Vikalpyate Vikalpi. Whatever we experience by fabricating, and it cannot exist in its own nature. Whatever is fabricated, differentiated, the sixth consciousness fabricates, it cannot exist in its own nature. This is very important to understand. Now, for the Theravada, the Rupa exists in its own nature. It has a nature, but this nature is completely, it is not existing in the four times, but it is completely dependent origination. So you cannot say that it exists as same in the four times. It is so the four aspects of analysis. First, you have to analyze the lakhana, the characteristic. When you analyze the characteristics, you can analyze the function. And this you find also in the Sanskrit Abhidharma, Xiang Ken Ye. The Ji Shalun, Chengwei Shalun, Yiche Satilun analyzes the phenomena by Xiang and Ye. Ye means Zoyong, function. But the Theravada, to make sure that you don't get involved with the Sarvastivada idea of the permanent dharmas in the three times. So also you have to add the Xianqi, the manifestation. Each dharma has to be manifesting. And it has to have a cause, Jinyin. It has many, many causes, but the most important cause has to be shown. Then you cannot mistake it to be something like a Samkhya, permanent entity. So we come to the four elements. Four elements are the base of the materiality. Now, without the four elements, there are no materiality. So actually what we experience as color, what we experience as a sound, what we experience as a smell, as the taste, it is all based on the four elements, sometimes translated as derived from the four elements, but it is not derived, it is based. Why? Because it appears at the same time like the elements, so how can it be derived? And it is the same like the elements, it is the constituent part of the atoms. These atoms in Theravada, they are called kalapa. Kalapa means cheese, conglomeration. Now the Theravada view of the atoms is similar to Sarvastivada. These atoms, they have constituent parts which can be analyzed. Every atom has at least 8 constituent parts. The 4 elements, then the color, then the smell, then the taste, and then the caloric value, oja. Some have more, but this is so-called avinibhoga rupa, the basic. This is similar. So, if you have like sensitivity of the eye, of course you have to add, if it is karmic, life faculty, because it is sensitive. And you have to add the sensitivity of the eye, ear, and so on. So you get 10 instead of 8. And you can see these different aspects of the analysis of the rupa on the previous page. Now, in the Pali commentaries, it is a matter of special emphasis that the characteristic of the elements, the lakhana, are the very things they characterize. Not to be mistaken about that. You cannot have the character of something. It is also in order to refute the Sarvastivada view. You cannot have something, characteristics which is permanent, because that which is characterized is always changing. I understand the hardness because my hands are soft. If my hands are not soft, I don't know any hardness of the table. If I am warm, so the table is not so hard. I can go through it. But I'm not a warm, I am a human being. I'm using hands, so this table is hard for me. And we take it granted that the colors that we see and the sounds that we hear are the same colors and the same sound that animals or hungry ghosts or the denizens of hell see and hear, but it is not true. So based on this, according to the Yogacara, only the 4 elements, they are in a way, they have the true nature in conventional reality, because they are the bijas in the mind. But the derived rupa is not real. Why it is not real? Because it is not objective at all. And because the bodily consciousness is the base for the eye consciousness, ear consciousness, and nose consciousness. And what the bodily consciousness experiences are the elements. Now the peculiarity of the Theravada is, which is connected with this analysis of the Rupa, which you don't have, that the water does not belong to the what we experience by the body, but water is experienced by the mind. Why? Because when you touch the water, you feel coldness, you feel flowing. Coldness is the element of fire, flowing is the element of wind. So the wetness you cannot directly feel by the body. Anyway, this is connected with this analysis of the Rupa. But anyway, in all this, according to the Theravada, same like Yogacara, these atoms, they are not real. They cannot be real because you can disintegrate them into these constituent parts. So when you study this meditation on the Rupa, you can actually smell your heart, smell your lung, taste your heart, taste your lung. This is peculiarity of the Theravada tradition. Not mention this. You can go into all the organs, taste. You can taste them, smell them directly by the mind if your concentration is very strong. You don't need to go through the eye to see the color of the your liver. You can see directly through the mind, which is in the Theravada, in the Yogacara tradition, the direct proof of the truth of Vaishya. So you can use Theravada meditation on the elements in a way to establish the Vaishya. So you can see that this sometimes it's very, very important to see the tradition from different perspectives. It will enrich our richness of understanding of Buddhism, which has incredible richness of wisdom due to the effort of the former yogis. So the conclusion of Yogacara is that the Rupa, which has resistance, like the table, like the colors, the Rupa which has resistance is not real, because the atoms are not real. So what remains actually, if you go deeply into this analysis, what remains actually is the mind. The Theravada itself, you can later study, also says the Rupa is yatha yatha upajati tata tata nirujati. It arises and ceases at the same place. Now the modern science comes to the same conclusion. The Rupa, the materiality you cannot grasp. When you disintegrate it, it will disintegrate into emptiness. So you can read carefully these four aspects of the definition of the four elements. We don't need to go into that. Remember that Theravada and Sarvastivada explained that the atoms, content of the atoms is real. For the Sautrantika, the atoms are not real. Only the conglomeration, which is called Sangata. And the conglomeration of Sangata is what we experience. Sangata means the conglomeration. So according to the Yogacara, the Buddha has explained the existence of the Rupa only with the aim of showing its non-self, in order to explain the non-self, not in order to explain that it really exists. This is the conclusion of Yogacara. And when you analyze carefully the Rupa according to the Theravada, even so it comes to the opposite conclusion. First is the Rupa, then comes the mind. But the technique of meditation leads you to the more or less to the conclusion of which Yogacara makes, that actually the Rupa cannot exist without the mind, and it is based in mind because the atoms do not exist, and these contents of the atoms can be directly experienced by the mind itself. You do not need to refer to the five senses. So the Rupa is not, usually it is explained, but it the form of the four elements on the level of the conventional reality, not on the level of the Paramartha. And in the Mahayana, we can study the phenomena from the level of the Paramartha, that is, from the level of the highest reality, first reality. That is the special emphasis of the Mahayana tradition. We should understand it very clearly. So the Rupa is not real. It was taught in order to abandon the belief in the self. This is the Yogacara position. The Theravada position, the Rupa is real, and it comes before the mind. According to the Abhidharma, you will never find it in the sutras, only in the Abhidharma. And why I explain that? Because we will learn the mind process. The mind process is, how does Theravada explain that we can experience the present Rupa, the present materiality? Because the mind has to go through the materiality, so the impermanence of the Rupa is 17 times slower than the impermanence of the mind. That's how we can experience the present Rupa, present materiality. So next I explain the actual meditation on the Rupa. You can go through it. I don't need to explain it now. The actual practice of the meditation on the four elements as practiced in Paok Monastery, Myanmar, where myself I was privileged to learn it, starts by arranging the 12 qualities of the four elements in the learning order. And then you arrange it according to the normal order: earth, the 6 qualities of earth, hardness, softness, roughness, smoothness, heaviness, lightness, 2 qualities of the water, cohesion and flowing, 2 qualities of the fire, coolness and heat, and 2 qualities of the wind, the pushing or vibration and supporting. You arrange it according to this order, natural order, and go through your body through these qualities in deep concentration until the body then disintegrates into these atoms or kalapas. And then when your concentration is strong, at first these kalapas, they moving with incredible speed, but because you have concentration and you concentrate on them, concentration is like a magnifying glass. So the speed of these atoms will reduce and reduce and reduce until they stand. So then you can understand that the rupa actually cannot exist without the mind. And you can make it directly the object of your concentration. It is easy. When it is moving quickly, you cannot do that. So this is a very precious meditation, which in a way brings us to our astonishment very close to the Yogacara view. Even so, the Abhidharma teaches the opposite. So when you have disintegrated these kalapas, these atoms into constituent parts, then you have completed the shamatha part of the practice of the 4 elements, and you can go to the vipassana part. And the vipassana part, the first vipassana knowledge is analysis of the rupa and nama. And this is the base for understanding the dependent origination. Important is the kalapa corresponding to atom in Northern Buddhism is the smallest possible cluster of unitary dharmas existing never in isolation but always associated closely one with other. Important, the constituent parts of the kalapas can be analyzed, however, not in the manner of different kinds of beings existing in the same bag, because they exist inseparable in one single atom. You cannot really separate them as being independent. This is being, this is dal, this is red, this is a white bean, this is the black bean. You cannot do that. Because you have learned the materiality arises in the same place and ceases in the same place. That which enables us to see the world stable is nothing but our 6 consciousness. And of course, according to science, our Earth is moving around the sun with a speed of I don't know how many kilometers in the second. So our idea of stability is based on the 6 consciousness, differentiating consciousness, which is based, so to say, on the manas, on the idea of the self. Thus, the movement of atoms is in fact just appearance in a approximate different place In other words, not real. However, it should be clearly understood that qualities of the constituent parts are real, indeed, as long as Rupa exists. So, according to the Theravada, only the Arahat is said to be one who transcends the torture of movement. And this brings us again very close to Yogacara, who understands actually the real base of everything that we experience, which is finally the mind. So according to Visuddhimagga commentaries, the constituent parts of the Kalapa are heaped together, do not scatter, and should be understood in terms of thick clusters analyzed in different ways. A yogi skillful in one-pointedness of mind can indeed bring them to a halt and thus become clear object of perception. So these constituent parts of the Kalapas can come to a halt, to stand still. So in a way, here we are in Jintu, Jinhui. The difference between the Theravada and the Mahayana is that the mind can create the rupas. The samadhi created rupa. We can experience it even in Theravada. Also, they will agree that we can create rupas through samadhi. When you attain nirvana, then after nirvana there is some rupa. They will not agree with that because the only mind can experience the nirvana. The mind which is deprived of the object. So this is the difference. So as to the Kalapas themselves, they are said to be surrounded by space, which defines their limit. This is very important. So what is the nature of the mind? The nature of the mind is like the space, because it defines the limits of everything we experience. So according to Theravada, which is different from Sautrantika, they cannot touch one another, cannot get mixed together, being like the concept of monad in Western philosophy. You may have heard of the German philosopher Leibniz. So they are, so to say, mental concept. These atoms are the mental concept. And this mental concept will disappear if you do this meditation on the, as described here. So in the Theravada Abhidharma, these atoms are concepts only, same like Yogacara. since they can be dissolved into their constituent parts, which exist as true entities, which cannot be further analyzed. You cannot further analyze earth, water, fire, wind, color, and so on. Color you can further analyze, but only you will come to the basic colors, which you cannot further analyze. What are the basic colors? Those of the casinos. White, red, yellow, and black or black-blue. In the Theravada Abhidharma, there are 18 real rupas produced in dependent origination. So in Theravada, this is, we have explained in Sarvastivada, Sautrantika, Yogacara, based on the Sanskrit tradition, we have a category which we don't have. In Theravada, we have the category of the Chitta Viprayukta Samskara, of Shin, Pushyang, Yin, Xing. The formations not Xiang Yin, not how to put the Samprayukta, not corresponding, not idea. The formations which are not connected with the mind. That's better. The formations not connected with the mind. You have this category in Yogacara, in Sarvastivada, not in Theravada. These formations which are not connected with the mind, which are not connected with the mind, like impermanence, like the prapti, the attainment, non-attainment in this tradition, northern tradition, Sanskrit tradition, the jivitendriya, the life faculty, and so on. They come usually under the category of the rupas not created in dependent origination, like space. Space here comes in Sarvastivada, it comes under non-created. In this tradition, Theravada, it comes under the rupas not created in dependent origination, because the space is not created in dependent origination. So this is a difference. So we don't need to study now all this. You can go through it, all these classifications of the rupa. The classification of the Dharma Ayatana Rupa, Fatyes, is different in Yogacara and different in Theravada. In Theravada, under the Fatya, you will find the mental factors also. You will find the apo, the water element. You will find the sensitivities. But in the Yogacara tradition, you will find the atoms, the conglomeration of the atoms. You will find the Vigyapti Rupa, the Pyaos, like Shen Pyao, the manifestation of mind through the body, manifestation of mind through the speech. They are also in Theravada, the rupa not created independent origination, not suitable for vipassana. So you have two kinds of rupa, suitable for vipassana 18 and not suitable for vipassana 10. You will find it here enumerated. Now in Sarvastivada and in Yogacara, you will find another rupa which is you will not find in Theravada, avidyapti rupa. Pu fei piaosu. This is very special. Nowhere find except in the northern tradition. Suppose you take sila. This sila is stored in mind in the form of the non-manifested materiality. But of course it is a concept, it is false. But for the Sarvastivadin it exists. For the Yogacara it is just concept, but a useful concept. Then now we are talking about Yogacara. What is the Fathyas, important Fathyas, especially for you studying the mental process in Yogacara? Yin Xiang, Pratibimba. That is also Fathyas. When you study meditation, you need Samatha Nimitta, right? Like Anapanasati, you need the Samatha Nimitta, the mental image of the object. When you study Kasinas, meditation on colors, you need the mental object of the colors, then you can go into absorption on that object, right? Now that is also Rupa. It is materiality. Now if you have studied according to this system of Abhidharma, Theravada, Abhidharma, you can also analyze it into kalapas and into constituent parts. In the Western concept, if you have mental image, it belongs to the mind, right? Of course, in Theravada also, but its constituent parts are the same like a rupa. When you analyze it, it has also the four elements. It has a color, it has a smell. So, where to put it? Under the Fathyas, Dharma Ayatana Rupa. Then you have the Dzais created by Samadhi. Same like you have the Chintu. What is Chintu? What is Chila Satya? The Rupa created by Samadhi. It is the Paoshen. Not fashion, but Paoshen. Also, it would come under this category of Fathyas. So in this category of the rupas not suitable for vipassana, you will come the main encounters, the main categories of what is called in Sanskrit Buddhism is Shin Pushyang Yin Shin. The formations not connected with the mind. So now we have tried our best to make as concise as possible analysis of the rupa. Important is to see that the rupa really exists in the Theravada tradition, same like a Theravada, same like in Sarvastivada, Sautrantika. But when you analyze it according to the living tradition, then you will find that it may have been this analysis of rupa also one of the reasons of the Yogacara understanding, that the outer rupa is nothing but the seeds in our mind, which is a Tian Fan. And due to this Tian Fan, we have the Xiang Fan, which is what we see. Okay, so now let us have 15 minutes break and then we continue. Otherwise, maybe you will get too many informations, difficult to digest. And we will come to the analysis of the mind, which is especially important here. But to understand the analysis of the mind, you have to understand the analysis of the rupa. Same in Yogacara, same in Theravada. But the difference is in Yogacara, you start by understanding that the outer objects do not exist. But in this tradition, same like Sarvastivada, Uttantika, the outer objects indeed have to exist. But when you meditate, you will come to doubt that this idea of the rupa preceding the mental process is really justified. But it is there, no doubt. According to Theravada, the rupa has to precede the mind so that the mind can differentiate. Okay. Now in Yogacara, as you have seen, the mind differentiates on the base of its Tianfen, which is the activates the alaya. Which is the Chen Fan, Swasamriti. Okay, so that much for now. Please have your tea, 15 minutes break. Okay, now we can start. There is one question, arising and ceasing in the same place. Which place is it? The Kalapa, the atom. That is a place. So now the skillful yogi becomes familiar with rupa when, in the words of commentary to the great discourse of the cowherd, he gets to know all the material qualities inside and outside of his body by counting them in accordance with their occurrence in the kalapa of 4 kinds of transformation. We have explained the kalapas. This is also peculiarity of the Theravada tradition. You have 4 kinds of kalapa, those created by karma, which is positive part of the body, those created by the mind, like the bodily movements, like the in-breath and out-breath, those created by the Utu, the fire element, like the sound, and those created by the ahara, by the food. Now let us go to the, you can study this, and if you want in some detail, please refer to the Visuddhimagga. I have taken these materials from the Visuddhimagga, from the path of purification, Chin Chin Tao Lun. Now, the Samanya Phala Sutta explain that the rupa, the materiality, is like, should be like a crystal, and the mind should be understood like a rope, the thin rope, how you call it? Like Nianju.
Nianju and Mala.
The rope. It's not a rope, but it's what? The
string.
String. Ah, okay. So the materiality should be understood like a crystal, and the mind should be understood like the string. When you bore the crystal, then the string going through the crystal. This will give you a clear idea of the detailed analysis of the materiality and the corporeality. Indeed, when you study the rupa, you will see there are transparent kalapas and non-transparent kalapas. These transparent kalapas, they are the sensitivities in our body. And when you have concentration and do the meditation on the 4 elements, the body becomes indeed transparent. Then, so this comparison makes sense. So now let us go to the other part of our experience in the world. First is surfa, which we have covered due to lack of time with in brief, but I hope you will find interest and study more, and you can ask me more questions. Now, the string which goes through this crystal of our body, it can be also analyzed in detail. And the key for that is, of course, dhyana. We have explained. When you have dhyana, you can do it. You can actually directly experience all these mental factors. But anyway, it is the 6 consciousness which experience, and we have already explained. If you use it, your attention in a different way, you will experience them also in a different way. So that is why it's very important to study different systems, so that you can see very clearly that this reality of differentiation is conventional reality, as the Yogacara emphasizes. But according to Buddhism, you have to understand conventional reality to understand the highest reality. Without understanding the conventional reality, you cannot be you cannot be not deluded about the highest reality. This is the special emphasis of Buddhism, and we should understand it. Now we also know, as Madhyanta Vibhanga explains, in a Yogacara, consciousness makes sense only in reference to the object, and in Yogacara, the object does not exist. But in this tradition, the object exists really. And only by detailed analysis of the object, you can get the detailed analysis of. And in the Pali tradition, this mind and mental objects are discussed in great detail. The commentaries which discuss 4 kinds of rules. You have the Chitta Niyama, the rule of the mind, the rule of the karma, the rule of the dharma, and the rule of the seeds. Seeds here means vegetation. So there are 2 types of mind described in the Theravada Abhidharma. The so-called Viti Chitta, the mind occurring in active mental process at 6 doors of perception, and the Viti Mutta Chitta, which corresponds to the alaya. It is a mind freed from active process of cognition, that is the birth consciousness, death consciousness, and the bhavanga consciousness, Youfenshin, which occurs whenever the object is not there. When the object is not there, what is there? Bhavanga is there. So in the Yogacara, you have learned that the Chitta and the Chaitas are born of alaya. Because, as you have learned, these Tianfen are the seeds, and this Tianfen, the seeds make the use of the Xiangfen, which are the things that we actually experience in the outside world. So this is a difference. So here, first you have to analyze the Viti Chittas, the mental processes, in order to understand the Bhavanga. And the analysis of the mental processes is based on the mental factors, because without the mental factors, you cannot have an active mind. Active mind appears only because of the mental factors. So whenever there is object and you differentiate it, it is because you use the mental factors. So these mental factors, they also very important. They are called the Chitta Kalapa. They are also conglomerates of the mind. Same like the materiality is the conglomerate of the mental, of the corporeal qualities. So the mind is the conglomeration of the mental qualities. So all we experience And all that we can differentiate in Vipassana are actually only and exclusively the conglomerates of materiality and the conglomerates of mind. The Chitta Kalapas and the Rupa Kalapas. And how we analyze the Chitta Kalapas, the conglomerations of the mind, depends very much on the attention we pay to the Rupa and how we analyze the Rupa. That is why we have first explained the Rupa. Then according to the Theravada, whenever the mind appears, there have to be 7 mental factors. They are called Sabbachitta Sadharana factors, common to all kinds of mind without exception. Now you may know in the Yogacara you have 5. Which are the 5? Alaya has only 5 mental factors. Which 5? There has to be touch, chu. If there is no chu, nothing will appear. Then if there is chu, there is show. Show means sensation. Lingna, the receiving of the materiality. Then there is a perception, which means the taking the image and naming the image of the object, xiang. Then there is a se. If you have attention and you differentiate the object, you have learned in this attention already you have a programming of your alaya, or the programming of from your bhavanga. Why? Because you pay attention according to your desire, according to the object also, according to the nien, to what you thinking about, and according to memory, according to your habit, you pay attention. So your program, your program in your mind already starts with your attention. So all mental processes start with your attention. You pay attention to something because of your habit, because of your desire, because of the impact of the object, and because of your memory. Very important to understand. So we are programmed already by our attention. When attention is there, the mental process can start. When the mental process is there, at least the basic mental factors will appear. The 5 we have mentioned, they are called in Yogacara Pian Man, or Pian Shin, Pian Man the Pian. And in the Theravada, you add to it, it is very important to understand, you add to it 2 other mental factors, which are the Shin Minken. According to Theravada, you have Se Minken and Shin Minken, 2 kinds of Minken. So Minken is like the similar concept like the Chi. It enables the mind to move. If there is no Chi, the mind cannot move. The Chi is like the horse, and the mind is like the horseman. Without the horseman, there is no horse. Without the horse, no horseman. So there has to be Shin Minken so that the mind can move and the mind is protected by it. And there is, of course, there is Manasikara. We forgot the Joy also is Pienshin in Australia. But peculiarity here, you have also Ekagata, Ting. Why? This is very important to understand. Why don't you have Ting among the mental factors, basic mental factors of Yogacara, and you have in Theravada? Because according to Yogacara, you can have several objects at the same time. According to Theravada, you cannot have several objects at the same time. When you pay attention to something, you have gathered your mind on that object. Even if it is distracted mind, you must have gathered it on that object, otherwise it will not appear. So according only one object at the time. You cannot have two objects at the same time because the mind is moving so fast. You do not notice because the mind is faster than light. So in one click of the fingers, you have already hundreds, thousands of mind processes. So how did they analyze it? Because of samadhi. The concentration is like the microscope, which can enlarge the object. When you enlarge the object, then you slow the mind. Same principle like with the upakalapas. First, they move with incredible speed when you have break your body into the kalapas. But then when you concentrate on them, the movement becomes slower, 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 until you can analyze their constituent parts. What is this proving? That actually the mind is a base for everything we experience. And how we experience it depends how we use the mind. You find similar idea in the Abhidharma commentaries in Theravada, like in the commentary to the Dhammasangani, the first book of Abhidharma, but it is not analyzed. But in the Yogacara, they make the conclusion. Only the mind has a self-nature, Zishi. So you have to put the materiality in this way that you concentrate on one object at a time. You have to put among the basic factors of all minds, you have to put the concentration there also. Because without concentration, the mind will not arise, the active mind. But since in Yogacara you have learned the place of alaya cannot be analyzed because it is the whole, everything we have. And it's upadi, it's jirsho also, that means object, can also not be analyzed. But in Theravada, you have the object of bhavanga. It can be analyzed. And what it is? Karma, karma nimitta, gati nimitta. Ye, yeshyang, shishyang. The symbol of the, suppose you die and you have been a butcher, you will see a knife. So it will be the symbol of your next destiny. If you have done many good deeds, you will see the heavenly chariot. It will be the sign of your next destiny. Or you will remember some karma you have done, some important karma, good or bad, and you will be born according to that. So your jisho for the next life can be differentiated. That's why in Theravada countries, also in Buddhism in general, if somebody is dying, the monks are invited to chant and to remind him of the good deeds he has done in the life, so that he can be born in a better destiny. So all makes sense. How we analyze the mind and mind, and that is attention. How we pay attention to the object. This is very important to understand. And the mental processes start with the attention. If there is no attention, you will not have an active mental process. Now, according to Yogacara, when there is attention, you already react according to the seeds in your consciousness. Then you have the 6 miscellaneous cetasikas, which are in Yogacara called Piechin. Wujung Piechin. But here you have a 6, and the first 2 is Shin Kensu. Shin Kensu, Pai Fa Lun is Puting, belongs to the Puting, Sejung Puting. Puting because they can be an animal, the Shanxin, Pushanxin, Wuqixin. Then you have the Shentie Adimokha, which is the same. You have a Virya, which is in Yogacara, belongs to the only to the Shanxin, the 11 positive mind, states of mind. Why? You can analyze very clearly. Because in the yoga in Theravada, we will see later, in order to analyze the mind, you have to receive it, you have to investigate it. When you investigate the mind, you need effort, right? Then you have to decide. To decide, you also need some effort. Then the Pite is a big confusion in Chinese Buddhism, unfortunately. In the Theravada Buddhism, the Pite, the Shi, belongs to the Xing, Xing Yin. In the Chinese Buddhism, it belongs to the Shou. But in Theravada, it can also belong to the Shou. Which Shou? Mental Shou, mental sensation. Now, in the first and second jhana, it is Shi. In the third jhana, it becomes La, bodily sensation. But what means body? Body means the mental factors. The mental factors control the body. So these terminologies are a little bit difficult to translate. Sewuryangxing Shi, which is mudita, completely different word in Pali and in Sanskrit. Shi means suishi. So confusion. Anyway, here it comes under the mental factors, not under sensation. And what means she? She means rejoicing at the object. And what means la? Experiencing the pleasant object directly. Visuddhimagga gives you example, like you in the desert, you see an oasis, so you rejoice at the sight, but you are not yet there. That is she. When you get there, you jump into the water and drink as much as you need and feel the coolness of the water. That is love. So the la is stable, physical, but still based on the mental factor. In the dhyana, the bodily sensations goes into background, but it is still called love. So a lot of confusion about that. Why it is called love? Because it contains the whole of the, it absorbs the whole of the mental factor. So also the whole of the body. Because the mental factors control how we experience the body. And yi, chanda, which is same, desire. So now I won't go into it because of the lack of time, but all these mental factors you can analyze in terms of their characteristic, xiang, terms of their way, or zoyung, or ye, of their function, in the terms of their manifestation, and in the term of their cause, so that you can make sure that they are all in dependent origination, and how you only experience them in dependent origination. So their own characteristic is only independent origination. It is not something lasting. So the Theravada, as opposed to Sarvastivada, explains very clearly that the dependent origination is Kum, is Shunya. Same like Mahayana. So these 13 mental factors, they are called anyamanya. That means appearing in all kinds of mind. No, and in Theravada, as opposed to the Sanskrit tradition, which is different, you find 5 kinds of mind. The kusala, which is shan, shin, akusala, pushan, shin, vipaka, ishu, shin, kriya, you don't find in the Sanskrit tradition. What is kriya? Wei zuo. It means the arahat mind, or certain minds in the processes we will find which happen automatically, like deciding mind. They appear automatically. There is no question of any force making them appear. So then if the mind is a wholesome mental process, wholesome means healthy mental process, then you will have these factors. In a Yogacara tradition, you have 11. Here you have 25. 25 possibilities. But actually not all must happen. Let us see which must happen. So the first is Xing, confidence. We translate as confidence because not as faith, because the Abhidharma explained as confidence, but Theravada Abhidharma. Confidence in what? 8. In Theravada you have so-called 8 Sadeya Vatu, 8 bases of the confidence which make you a Buddhist. If you have these 8 bases of confidence, you are a Buddhist. If you don't have them, you are not necessarily a Buddhist. Which are the 8? The Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the past 5 aggregates, present 5 aggregates, future 5 aggregates, if you not become an Arahant, the dependent origination, and the different so-called Sikkhapadas, different desana, different Jiao Xie that the Buddha gave, so that we go out of suffering. Then the same, you have the shame and dread, Tsanhui. This is same for all Buddhist traditions. Then you have the San Shanken, Wutan, Wuchen, but the Wuzhi is here called Zhiken, faculty of wisdom. It has a different name, but the meaning is the same. They are common. Then you have the Xingshi, the impartiality or equanimity, which is also same in Yogacara. Then you have the Kaya Pasadi and Chitta Pasadi. This is different. The Sarvastivada tradition, the Yogacara speak only of mental, not of Kaya Pasadi. But Kaya, I have explained to you here, means mental factors, which controls the body. So there is a lot of confusion about it. You will find that also in the Yogacara. But now come the special factors, mental factors you don't find in Yogacara Sarvastivada. The Shen Qing, the lightness of mental states and of the mind, the pliancy of mental states and of the mind, the adaptability of mental states and of the mind, the proficiency of mental state and of the mind, and the rectitude of mental states and the mind. So these are peculiar to the Theravada. They become mental factors. And you can actually study them in the state of Samadhi. So all depends how you use your mind to differentiate the objects. Then other mental factors which may be accompanying profitable states, they are the Zhiken, which means Wu Zhi. It is Karuna, the compassion and sympathetic joy. Why they don't mention Metta, Cixin? Why they don't mention She? Because Cixin, She, 什么 Bhutan. Sorry, Pujen. Cixin, Metta is Pujen. Metta means non-hate. And what means She? She means Sing She, equanimity. So they don't need to mention it. But Karuna, Mudita, compassion, sympathetic joy appear sometime, not in all wholesome souls. Then again, peculiarity of Theravada depends on the way how you analyze the mind. Then you can have a right speech, right action, right livelihood, which are analyzed because they are part of the Paja Shen Tao. So they put them into the mental factors. You have to classify them somewhere. And you, that's why in the Sanskrit tradition, they classify them as Wu Piao Si. In this tradition, they classify them as mental factors. Depends how you analyze them. Okay, so then you have a different classification based on, I have explained to you in Theravada is a very practical type of meditation, very practical type of analysis, while from the early times the Sanskrit tradition tends the rational analysis based on logic. The Theravada usually bases the Vipassana on the direct experience, not so much on logic. So the analysis accordingly is different. So as you may know, in the Yogacara, to speak now about the wholesome mental factors, you have 11 in Yogacara, Shin, Jin, we have mentioned, San, Hui, Pu Chen, Pu Tan, Pu Chi, Jing An, same, Pu Fani, you don't find, but in the Yogacara, it is also Jyata. It is not Janta. And Puhai is also Jyata, not Janta, but it is useful. And Sing She is same. So these 11, they're very similar, but still you can see, you can analyze in a different way according to how you put the dharmas into the mind. So in the Yogacara tradition, similar to Sarvastivada, you find the 6 basic kleshas, Fanao, Tan, Chen, Wu Ming, Man, Yi, Tian. They become 10 if you divide the Tian into 4. But here you have a practical method based on the analysis of the mind. Why this analysis? Because according to the Theravada analysis, the unwholesome is based on the 4 causes. And the wholesome is also based on the 4 causes. What are the 4 causes? For the wholesome, it is Pujen, Putan, Puch, the unwholesome, Chen, Tan, Chi. So you have 3 causes of the wholesome, you have 3 causes of the unwholesome. So the differentiation is according to the causes. According to this analysis, and rupa is without the cause. And the mind always with it, except when it is wu wei. You can say that it always with the cause. So if there is the mind based in delusion, it can come either with shamelessness or with no moral dread or with restlessness. And these appear, sorry, I got confused. These 4, because I was speaking about the 6, so now to the 6 we have the 4 which appear in each and every unwholesome mind. And they are delusion, shamelessness, no moral dread, and restlessness. They appear in each and every unwholesome mind, no exception. Then you have these 3 groups, 3 bases. So if you have the greed, unwholesome mind, then it is only pure greed, or it is connected either with wrong view or with the conceit. The wrong view and conceit cannot come together. Now, if you have the mind motivated by hate, so it can come purely as a hate, or it can come together with jealousy, it can come together with avarice, or it can come together with remorse. If you have a mind motivated by, or rooted rather than motivated here, in the delusion, it can come with sloth and torpor, which are putting in Yiche Shatilun, or it can come with doubt. Doubt also is based in ignorance. So altogether there are 14 unprofitable states in the Pali Abhidharma. 13 Anyasamana, 25 Sobhana, that means beautiful, which make 52 mental factors. In Yogacara you have 51. The profitable states are differentiated according to the state of perception. Sensual, fine forms, formless, and supermundane. The same in other traditions. in the sphere of sensual perception are 8 kinds of profitable states, differentiated according to feeling, according to knowledge, and according to whether they are prompted or unprompted. So you have 8. So Manasasagata, everybody learns by heart. If you learn Abhidharma, we all have to remember by heart, but I don't force you to learn it. So Manasasagata, Ditthigata, connected with the pleasant sensation, either with Somanasasagata Ditthigata, either with the view, wrong view, or without the wrong view, and either prompted or non-prompted. So altogether, with these divisions, you will get 8. 8 minds rooted in greed, desire. Then you have 2 minds rooted in hate. And you have 2 minds rooted in ignorance. So if you, we all have to learn this by heart, but you don't need to. You can consult the Abhidharma to get or the Chin Taolun to get a more clear idea. So they are in Pali 12 unprofitable states of mind divided into 3 groups. The unprofitable states of mind exist in the sensual sphere only. So the unwholesome mind, the non-healthy mind, is restrained to the sensual sphere. In hell, among animals, among the hungry ghosts, among the humans, and among the gods of the sensual sphere. When you go to the Brahmas, no more unwholesome states of mind. So in the greed group, you will find the mind associated with either with pleasant sensation or with indifferent perception, sensation. And in the dosa group, in the hate group, you will always find only domanassa, yo. Only the mind with the domanassa, yo, how to translate with resentment. So why? Because the hate is always connected with resistance, pratigha. When you have resistance, all these things will come. Depression, fear, they all come under this group. Depression, fear, worry, because of resistance. Then a delusion group always with equanimity. When you have a delusion, in its pure form, either with doubt or with agitation. So doubt and agitation you have learned now in the previous lessons. All the obstacles in shamatha can be put together as either agitation or excitement or tinamida, the thinking mind. And that is ignorance. So ignorance also contains why? Because we are ignorant, we have greed and we have the resistance. So of course, the ignorance is the mother of all the unwholesome states. Now there are 36 kinds of resultant vipaka states of mind. Now, peculiarity of the Yogacara, you will find two forms of vipaka. You have learned already, Ishu and Tengyin. Tengyin is, you have learned the Yogacara process, Shuai Xinqiu, Jieting, then Shan Pushangxin and Tengliu. And the Tengliu means that the effect and the cause have the same structure. In the Ishu is called Ishu because the structure of the mind is changed, it is transformed. Now, in Yogacara, as you have learned, actually the only vipaka is alaya. It is a real vipaka. Now, in this tradition, you will find many, many vipakas. Why? You have learned also. Because the alaya is the cause and the effect. Alaya is the Neng-zang and Suo-zang and Zhi-zang, Sri-zang. But the situation is very different here. Because you don't analyze starting with the alaya, you analyze starting with the bhavanga. When the bhavanga is interrupted, the mental process starts. And the bhavanga continues because it has an object. What object? All mind has to have an object. Object of alaya is not clear because it contains all the seeds. But the object of bhavanga is clear. You can analyze it actually. It is either your karma or the sign of the karma or the sign of the destiny, which you have seen in your past, last active mind process of the past life. So in the northern Sanskrit tradition, you have Jungyo. In the Theravada tradition, you have no Jungyo, but you have a corresponding aspect. What is called Jungyo, the Antarabhava, is the Erkwe state, but not a Jungyo, not a Antarabhava. So these 8 profitable minds that you have learned, they can be profitable in one who is learning or one who is a commoner. They can be Wu Wei, that means Wei Zuo in an Arahat. Arahat does not produce any karma, but he makes many good deeds, but not making any karma anymore, because he's not going to be reborn. We are making karma because we are going to be reborn. Arahat does not make a karma. So he's profitable when he does good deeds, and he does many good deeds. So he does it only Wei Zuo, without accumulating karma. What is the nature of the Chetana, of the will? To accumulate the formations. Because we accumulate formations, we will be born. The Arahat does not accumulate any formations, so he will not be born again. We accumulate formations, so we will be born in accordance to what we accumulate. And then if you are born now, later you can analyze, because it is rather complex. You can study a little bit Abhidharma. It is so fascinating. When you are reborn, now you are a human being, so it means you are reborn on the base of the wholesome mind process. What wholesome mind process? This is a resultant issue. So your bhavanga will be formed by this Shan-Sin issue, the 8. Understand? And you can analyze it, provided you use the Theravada way of analysis. It is a meditation experience. It is not a theory, but it is a meditation experience, provided you put objects into the mind according to the Theravada system. If you put objects in the mind according to the Yogacara system, you will definitely also be able to analyze according to the Yogacara. So, what is the conclusion? Jieshen meeting, all that we can analyze, we analyze by 6 consciousness, and it is only the relative reality. It cannot be the highest reality, Shen-Yi. It can only be Shisuti, not Shen-Iti, as the Abhidharma believes. This is very important. You should see it very clearly and not be mistaken about it. So these different systems of Abhidharma, they are not really a contradiction, they are complementary. If you accept them as the worldly reality, not as the highest reality, as often done in Abhidharma. And we definitely need to penetrate the worldly reality, not to be mistaken about the highest reality. We have to understand the worldly reality cannot be the self, cannot belong to the self. If we don't understand it, we will be mistaken about the highest reality. Then we will have wrong view. Why? Because we don't understand dependent origination from the point of view of Theravada also, from the point of view of Buddhism. So if you are born in a form, you become a Brahma, so you will be born with what consciousness? With the resultant consciousness of the first, second, third, fourth jhana. And if you are in the formless sphere, then you will be born with the resultant consciousness of the formless absorptions into the formless space, into the formless space, endless consciousness, the nothingness, and neither perception nor non-perception. Then you have the four supermundane profitable states. How do you know that somebody is a realized person? Because he can go into the Kuo-chan, into the Samadhi on the fruit of his realization. So whenever he wants to see the Genru, he can absorb into the Genru. Because he has gone through the Tiantao, and this Genru has made a deep impact on his mind, so it cannot disappear from his mind. The common man cannot get the Kuo-chan. Impossible. Why? Because he has not experienced directly the Genru. So he is working with what? With the concept. But the emptiness is not a concept. If emptiness was a concept, then it would be a worldly reality only. Then this eye consciousness and so on, the moment of eye consciousness, they are also vipaka, they are also issue. Shwai issue also. Why? Because they come directly from the attention, directly from the alaya. What we see by eye consciousness is not what we later differentiate by the mental consciousness, but it is not different, but not the same. By eye consciousness, I know the form, but I don't know Xuan Hua. I don't know here the Tao Yan Shi. I don't know myself even. It is by mental consciousness that I know. Because I go through the process, you have learned it, the process of investigation, deciding, and you will find the similar principles in the Theravada. So then you have the Sampatichana, the receiving consciousness, then you have the investigating consciousness, three kinds and so on. You can later study in detail. Now the peculiarity of the Pali, there are 8 kinds of so-called way to Kiriya consciousnesses. The 8, they call it functional consciousnesses. That are the 5 jhanas in fine forms. It's only for arahats. for formless jhana, also only for the arahats, because they don't accumulate any good deeds by going into the dhyana. They produce no more karma, and the dhyana is indeed a very powerful karma. Very powerful karma for the rebirth in higher spheres of existence. But for arahat, no more. He does not want to be born. Then they are in the mental process, you will find the three functional states: the sense door adverting consciousness, the mind door adverting consciousness, and speciality of the Theravada, the laughing consciousness of an arahant. This is a very special mind, only in Theravada. In regard to this, the dream in which we live, the arahat has only a gentle laugh. So now let us go to the mental processes, which is so important. You have heard the mental process in the Yogacara, now the mental process in the Theravada. That we experience in daily life, we experience through these mental processes, nothing else. This is very important to understand. Now, these mental processes in Yogacara explain what? Why they are explained in that way? What is the emphasis of the mental process, analysis of the mental process in Yogacara? The Fa Wu Wo. Why Fa Wu Wo? Because the Shuai Er comes directly from the Alaya, right? And it, how we use attention, it returns again to the Alaya. Teng Yin, Teng Yin Xin. So Alaya is the cause, the bijas, and the effect. What we experience due to the bijas. But here, the rupa really exists, and in order to analyze it, you have to concentrate the mind. When you pay attention to something, you already concentrate the mind on that thing. You bring the mind to that thing. It is connected. We have already explained attention has a similar function like what? Like Si. Joy has a similar function like Si. What function? Bringing the mental factors together. When you have will, you bring the mental factors together. When you have attention, you also bring the mental factors together. And according to Theravada, you can have attention only to one object. You cannot have attention to two objects. In Yogacara, you can be aware of several objects together. You can know your meditation object. You can also know at the same time the unpleasant feeling of your knees. You can know the sound, and you can have unpleasant feeling in the feet, and you can have the pleasant feeling mental of being in the samadhi at the same time. This is impossible in Theravada. Why? Because you cannot bring the mind to the two objects at the same time, to the three objects at the same time. Why? Because if you have attention, mental process will start and the bhavanga will be cut. If you don't have attention, the mental process will not start, bhavanga will not be cut. Is it clear? So you have two kinds of mental processes. The mental process based on the five senses, which is called Wu Men Xin Kuo Cheng, and the process based on the mind door, which is called Xin Men Kuo Cheng. Now the Xin Men Kuo Cheng is of two kinds, either following the Wu Men Kuo Cheng, or if your object is the abstract object like the truth, then it comes directly from the mind. It does not follow the Wu Men process. Now, if there is any object, then the mind will go through it. And the process of mind going through the object has to take place. It has to be 17 times slower than the appearance and disappearance of the object. So it is called abhujita. Abhujita means the process of mind bending to the object. So how we experience the object depends on abhujita, how we bend the mind to the object, and on the object itself, what impact makes the object on the mind. But we can change the nature of the impact of the mind on the way how we use our attention to the object. So we are not the slaves of the object, we can be masters of the object. But still, we will have to go through this process. So if the object makes a big impact on the mind, then it goes through all these minds which are explained here. And all together they will make the 17 moments. So if there is impact of the object, so the bhavanga first, there will be past bhavanga, then the bhavanga will vibrate because of the impact of the object. Then it will be, when it vibrates, it will be cut. As we have explained in Yogacara, if the object is, you know that something is there, but you cannot distinguish it, what it is. So, or if the impact of the object is not very clear, then it does not need necessarily to go through all these stages, but you have to deduce the 17 moments. So the Atita Bhavanga can become many moments. Depends on the strength. Atita Bhavanga means the past Bhavanga. Depends on the impact of the object. If the impact of the object is very powerful, then it will go through all these stages. If the impact of the object is not so powerful, it does not need to go through all these stages, then the past bhavanga will be many, many, many moments. Depends on the impact of the object. If the impact of the object is great, after past bhavanga, vibrating bhavanga, then the stream of the bhavanga will be cut. So the mind can turn to the object. And this is called adverting to the 5 doors. You know something is happening. Then, because you are using eye to see the object, so the object is reflected in the sensitivity of the eye first, because you are using the eye. Then the mental consciousness has to receive it. After having adverted to it. Actually, according to here, I have forgotten. Sorry, because I was writing in speed, wanted to write quickly, and many, many things to write. So after the adverting to the 5 doors, if you are using eye consciousness, the eye consciousness will appear. If you are using ear consciousness will appear. If you are using the tongue consciousness will appear. If you are using the nose consciousness will appear. If bodily consciousness, the bodily consciousness will appear. So before receiving consciousness, you have to put the 5 consciousnesses. So suppose you use the eye So after adverting to the 5 doors, the object will be reflected in the eye. Then the mental consciousness can receive it, it can investigate it, and the automatic consciousness then decides about its nature. If it is based on a wholesome mental process, it will be the yonisho manasikara, khali zoe. If it is a unwholesome mental process, it will be pukhali zoe. Then you have decided about the object, then the mind goes through the object in 7 or 6 moments. And then, same like in Yogacara, you have the Teng Yin. Here it's not Teng Yin, it's Ishu. And it is called Tat Aramana. That Tat Aramana means that object. So this is explained in the scriptures by 2 similes. Spider and the man sleeping under the mango tree. Suppose, very good is spider simile. Suppose there is a spider in the net. Object finds into the net. So it will vibrate, net will vibrate. Then he will be aware something is there. Then if he is aware something is there, then what will happen? Then he will receive the object, investigate the object, goes to the object, suck the blood, suck the juice of the fly, and then he after having it sucked, he decides, oh, it's that, and goes back to sleep. Another simile, the man sleeping under the mango tree. Man sleeping under the mango tree, he has a blanket over his eyes and sleeping. That is bhavanga. No object. Then, boom, the mango falls. Something is happening. So his bhavanga vibrates, is cut. So he turns to the object and sees, aha, a ripe mango. So he receives the object, touches it, investigates it, and decides this is a ripe mango. He eats it, the Javana consciousness, having eaten it, some aftertaste remains in his mouth. Then he put the blanket again and continues sleeping. So this is a simile for understanding this process, mental process. So if you concentrate, if you accept this theory that you can only pay attention to one object at the time, then it makes a perfect sense, and it is indeed so. You can actually see these moments appearing, disappearing mind if you are in samadhi. No problem. It is the experience of the yogis, not just a theory. But these exact definitions, they are because you have decided against that. But there are these moments of minds appearing and disappearing, definitely there. But that you have chosen 17, then they will be 17. If you have chosen 16, then they will be 16. Very interesting. How we pay attention to the object defines how we actually experience it. So if the object makes a very great impact, the process continues till retention and ends there. If great, till impulsion and ends there, then what will happen? You will have to add, because retention is 2 moments, you will have to add 2 moments to the past bhavanga, so that you will get this abhujita, 17 moments, because the impermanence of the matter is always 17 moments lower than the impermanence of the mind. So it all makes sense. If little impact till Votapana, then what will happen? Sometimes you decide what it is, but you don't follow, right? So in that case, what will happen? The impact of the object will not be very powerful. So you will have to add another 7 moments to the past bhavanga. So the past bhavanga will continue a long time, because the impact of the object on the bhavanga is not strong. Here it is very weak. You know the object is there, but you don't want to go through it. It does not interest you. So you will find in some other, I don't want to go into it, there is of course discussion among the teachers of the Abhidharma. Some also speak of other mind, which can even go before the Votapana. But we won't go into that, that is not important. There are two kinds of mind door thought process. One following the 5-door process, and the pure mind process, pure mind door process. When you take an object which is not connected with the 5 senses, like you contemplate what is truth, what is not truth, what is right, what is wrong, then you don't need to follow the 5 senses. Your object comes purely from the mind. And if this is the case, then you don't need the 17 moments, because your object is the mental object, right? So you will have, because you start thinking, then your bhavanga start vibrating. When the bhavanga start vibrating, it will be cut, right? When it is cut, then it turns to the object, then it goes through the object, and if the object is very clear, then will be the aftertaste of the object, the what is translated here as a retention moments. With a clear object, mind falls back to bhavanga after the 2 retentive moments. With the object that is not clear, after jhana. A yogi who wishes to perceive directly the mental process in order to study them by practical experience should be familiar with 6 groups of 6. The 6 bases that are the 6 sensitivities, the 5 sensitivities and hard base. We have already said that is a peculiarity of the Theravada. The 6 doors, the 5 sensitivities and bhavanga. Bhavanga is a door, but the hard base is the vatu, the base. This is a difference. Bhavanga is a door, but the hard base is a base, but not the door, because it is physical, not mental. The 6 doors connected with 6 consciousnesses, 6 consciousnesses connected with 6 objects. The 5 objects, Wu Chen, plus the Fachi, mental sphere, which according to the Pali is 5 sensitivities, 5 subtle forms, 6 kinds of consciousnesses, 52 mental factors, nirvana, and concepts. Concepts also belong to the Fachu. There are 2 special mental processes when you enter the jhana and when you get realization. You can study these mental processes if you're interested. When you study the jhana and when you have the realization, you can actually study all these mental processes when you go back on your mind. A yogi familiar with the Abhidharma model of mental process can also learn to study the dying thought process. So you don't need necessarily the supernatural powers to study the dying process. You can study it with vipassana. so if you have a dying process, then you will have the mental mind process, and if it is object is clear, then you will have the retention. Then you have the patisandhi, which is bhavanga. Then in the new life, after 16 bhavangas, you will have starting a new javana. And that will do for today. We have covered a lot of material. There are some questions already coming, so please prepare some good questions so that all of us can benefit. Some questions are already coming. We will go through them next lesson. Now it's already 9:30, and some of us have to go back so we will get home late. So let us make the 回向，愿你此功德普及一切，我等一众生皆空成佛道。So that much for today. And when is the next lesson? 5th of April. That means 1 week or more. After 1 week. Okay. See you next week. Omitobo. Have a wonderful week and a wonderful life with the help of Buddhist wisdom. Omitobo.
Omitobo. Thank you very much.
Omitobo.
But it's more than 1 week, maybe 10 days.
10 days.
It's Sunday.
Okay. So 10 days. See you after 10 days. Bye-bye. And after that, there will be the public lectures. And after the public lectures or during the public lectures, I will prepare the questions for oral examinations. And if you don't want to take oral examination, then you can use them for essay. And the oral examination will take place on the 19th of April. And if you want to write an essay, then I will leave on Hong Kong on 28th. If you can do it before, submit before that, okay. If not, then I will have to do the job in Czech and send it back by computer. But I am not good in computers, as you may have noticed. So please write it quickly. Omitobo.